My name is Carissa Samaniego, and I'm an artist living in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I teach at New Mexico State University as a visiting assistant professor of sculpture. And in my own work, I incorporate sculpture, textiles, neon, drawing, photography, video into my practice that uses materials, objects to tell stories, oftentimes autobiographical stories or ones that I'm pulling from my family. I grew up in between Las Cruces, or the area around Las Cruces, and a small town in Minnesota. And those are the two places that have shaped my identity. And those places, those people, those stories come into my work. The three textiles that are part of the exhibition here are three of an ongoing body of work called the Carència series. These three are Old Blue, Campo del Chamiso, and Square Dance. And I started making this work when researching the tradition of textiles here in New Mexico, particularly along the Rio Grande. I was taught how to piece quilt by my mom and my grandma. And so I was further thinking about the ways in which I've spent time along the river here, and how I might represent that visually. These pieces here are using a block piecing method of assembly, of sort of creating a pattern and putting together the material. But the shape and size of them is modeled after those Rio Grande blankets that would have gone in like a twin bed. And then on the bottoms of them, I've got lead fishing weights and fishing lures that you would use today in fishing along the Rio Grande, because that's how oftentimes I've spent my time on the river. The ways that I use the river today. When you think about like Americana in the United States, neon is sort of part of that language, part of that vocabulary. So that's why I wanted to use it. And I think that the neon, it's a bit of an unexpected material to be using with a textile, and hopefully with the fishing lures too. And I'm always looking to piece together stories or materials that tell stories that do have parts that are perhaps feel not connected, or feel sort of like they're polar opposites or unfamiliar to one another. But to put them together, to recombine these things, to create a new way of thinking about a place or an identity, a way of telling a story. The sign that's here, that's blinking, the accent on top of the N is blinking, making the sign have an N 1 second and then an Enye another second, so it reads Americana or Americania. And that's just a sort of a play, a bit of a like a silly way, I guess, to play with that word, or maybe a punchy visual way is maybe a better way to say it. Like it's a sort of a quick read. But Americania is a larger project that I'm using. I've got this shirt on here. This is one of the projects that I've done that I'm sort of thinking about in this way, and it's all the work I'm calling Americania. But it is a way for me to think about my own identity and the collective identity that we have as citizens of this country, or as residents of this country, or as sort of neighbors and humans in this space. But it's a way for me to think about how we do think about ourselves collectively, and how the dominant narrative is this it's a story that comes from the East, and it's about manifest destiny and people founding these new lands and you know, the American story. But what I've realized in doing research about my own family history here in New Mexico is that the story that we tell about the way America was created is one that comes from this very particular perspective. And I think that there's a much broader way to think about how we've developed into the people that we are today, and part of that is through this history of people populating what we know now as the United States along the Rio Grande and here in New Mexico. And I think about how our traditions and histories and heritage have shaped what we think of as classic American identity, if you will, Americana. I think of art as a way of knowing, art making as a way of understanding the world, art as a way of keeping the stories, you know? And I think often we understand that happens in music and literature, but we don't always acknowledge how much sort of the visual material that artists create and bring into our lives, it's our way of keeping us alive and telling our stories.